Atlantis in Ghost in the Shell. The dimensional tier opened above Niihama Bay at 3:47 a.m. local time, and the automated defense grid that ringed the city's coastline registered an impossible mass signature falling from a point in the sky that hadn't existed a microsecond before. 600,000 tons of ancient architecture, already burning and venting the atmosphere from catastrophic hyperdrive failure, plunged toward dark water with the terrible momentum of a falling moon. Atlantis hit the bay with force that registered on seismographs across 3 prefectures. The impact sent a column of displaced water 300 meters into the night sky, and the shockwave rippled outward to shatter windows in coastal districts kilometers away. City-wide emergency systems activated within 90 seconds, not because anyone understood what had happened, but because Niihama's infrastructure had been designed by paranoid engineers who'd learned that catastrophe arrived without warning in this city. Inside Atlantis, Lieutenant Colonel John Shepard picked himself up from the deck plating of the control room, his ears ringing and his HUD. No, this wasn't Halo. This was just his standard tactical awareness, painting a nightmare of cascading system failures. Red warning indicators bloomed across every console. Water alarms, structural integrity alerts, power grid failures rippling through sections that had survived Wraith sieges, replicator attacks, and a dozen other catastrophes across 2 galaxies. Report. Shepard barked, hauling himself toward the primary console where Rodney McKay was already fighting through cascading error messages with the desperate focus of someone whose city was actively dying around him. "We crashed," McKay said, which was unhelpful but accurate. "We crashed into water, ocean, lake, something large, and the impact triggered emergency submersion protocols that half worked because the shield was already failing from whatever tore us out of hyperspace. We're taking on water in 6 sections. The ZPM is stressed but stable. Cloak is." He checked another readout and swore creatively. "Cloak is inconsistent. Ha, ha, ha. It's flickering between active and offline, which means anyone watching probably saw us hit the water like a dying whale." "Location?" Shepard demanded, moving to the sensor display that was slowly reconstructing itself as backup systems came online. Taylor Emigan arrived from the direction of the residential sections, a nasty cut above her eyebrow already clotting, her expression carrying the controlled calm that meant she was suppressing genuine alarm. "Colonel, I have injury reports from 12 sections. Nothing fatal, but we have broken bones, concussions, and Dr. Keller says the infirmary itself sustained damage during impact." "Location, McKay," Shepard repeated. "Working on it. The sensor grid is patchy, but I'm pulling external data now." McKay's fingers flew across the console, and the holographic display resolved into a night skyline that made every person in the control room go still. It wasn't Earth. Not their Earth, anyway. Not the SGC's Earth. Not Pegasus. Not any world in the ancient database that McKay could immediately cross-reference. The skyline was a fever dream of impossible density. Towers stacked upon towers, neon advertisements the size of buildings projected onto smog-hazed air, elevated highways weaving between structures like circulatory systems, and everywhere, the soft blue glow of data networks visible even from orbit-adjacent sensor sweeps, as if the entire city were one vast, humming brain. "That's not possible," McKay breathed, and Shepard had heard McKay say those exact words often enough to know it meant something had genuinely broken his understanding of reality. "The network density alone, Shepard. I'm reading information transfer rates that make our subspace communications look like smoke signals. This entire city is wired. Not just computers, everything. Traffic systems, building infrastructure, personal devices, and there are biological signatures showing technological integration I don't have a category for." "Cyborgs," Ronan Dex said flatly from the doorway, having arrived mid-conversation with his particle magnum already in hand and blood on his temple from a fall he clearly hadn't bothered to treat. "That's what you're describing. People who are part machines." "That's an oversimplification, but not an inaccurate one," McKay admitted. pulling up biological scan data that made his scientific fascination briefly overwhelm his panic. I'm reading humans with prosthetic limbs registering as fully organic equivalent functions, neural interfaces integrated directly into brain tissue. And Shepard, his voice dropped. I'm reading at least one signature that's registering almost no organic material at all, a brain in an entirely synthetic body. That shouldn't be possible with any technology in the ancient database, and it definitely shouldn't be casually walking around a modern human city. Shepard processed this the way he processed every impossible tactical situation, by focusing on immediate priorities and letting the existential implications wait their turn. Can they see us? They can definitely see the giant crater we made in their bay, McKay said. Whether they can identify what we are specifically depends on how good their sensors are, and given the tech density I'm reading, I'd guess very good. We need that cloak stabilized, and I need power rerouted from non-essential systems. And he stopped, staring at a new readout. Shepard. Something's trying to access our network. Wraith? Replicators? No, it's... McKay's fingers moved faster, defensive protocols activating almost by reflex. It's a hacking attempt, a sophisticated one. Whoever's out there isn't shooting at us. They're trying to talk to our computers. 3 kilometers away, in a mobile command unit, parked at the edge of a hastily established police cordon, Major Motoko Kusanagi sat with her eyes closed and her consciousness threaded through 6 different network layers simultaneously, trying to make sense of a signal that violated every assumption her considerable experience had built about what technology could be. "Batu," she said, her voice carrying the flat calm that her team had learned meant she was working through something genuinely strange. "I need you to look at this." Batu leaned over her shoulder, his single visible cybernetic eye, the rest hidden behind his signature red-tinted optics, narrowing at the data scrolling across her interface. "What am I looking at, Major?" "An operating system I don't recognize, architecture that doesn't match any known military, corporate, or foreign intelligence signature in our databases. And encryption that's..." She paused, something that might have been respect entering her voice. "It's not resisting me through complexity. It's resisting me through unfamiliarity, like trying to read a language built on principles I've never encountered." Chief Daisuke Aramaki's voice crackled through the command channel from Section 9 headquarters. "Major, report. What crashed into our bay?" "Unknown, Chief. Whatever it is, it's approximately 600 meters at its widest point, partially submerged. And it's putting out an energy signature that our physics division is calling theoretically impossible. I attempted a standard network intrusion 3 minutes ago and encountered something I've genuinely never seen before, an active, adaptive defense that's learning my intrusion patterns in real time and closing vulnerabilities faster than I can exploit them." "You're telling me something out-hacked you," Aramaki said, and there was an edge of genuine concern in his usually measured tone. "I'm telling you, something is defending itself with a sophistication that suggests either extremely advanced artificial intelligence or..." Kusanagi opened her eyes for the first time in several minutes, her prosthetic irises reflecting the emergency lighting of the command vehicle. "Or something that's actually alive in a sense our current frameworks don't account for. Chief, request authorization for direct physical investigation. I want eyes on this thing before Section 6 or the Megacorps get their hands on it." Authorization granted. Kusanagi, Batu, Togusa, full deployment, and Major, Aramaki's voice carried a warning. "Whatever this is, the Prime Minister's office is already asking questions, which means the corporate liaisons will be asking questions within the hour. Secure what you can before this becomes a jurisdictional nightmare." "Understood, Chief." Kusanagi stood, her thermoptic camouflage suit already humming to life around her cybernetic frame. "Togusa, bring the Tachikomas." If that thing has active defenses sophisticated enough to counter my intrusion attempts, we may need more conventional problem-solving capabilities. Inside Atlantis, McKay had managed to stabilize the cloak, mostly reducing their visibility to conventional sensors while doing nothing about the very large, very obvious crater and displaced water that 100,000 cameras had probably already captured. Shepard had assembled a response team, himself, Ronan, Taylor, and a security detail of 6 Marines who looked significantly more nervous than their combat experience should have warranted. "Talk to me about the hacking attempt," Shepard said, watching McKay work. "It stopped, actually," McKay said, sounding almost disappointed. "Whoever it was, they hit our defensive protocols, got rebuffed, and pulled back rather than escalating. That's either good tactical restraint or they're regrouping for something bigger," Ronan finished. "Yeah, that's the less comforting interpretation. Thank you, Ronan." McKay pulled up external sensors again, watching thermal signatures moving toward the crash site with disciplined, professional urgency. "We've got incoming. Multiple heat signatures, vehicle-mounted and foot-mobile, converging on our position. Whoever these people are, they're organized and they're fast. Estimated contact in 11 minutes. Shepard checked his weapon, then looked at his exhausted, injured team and the flooding city around them. Atlantis, the mighty ancient city ship that had survived Wraith sieges and interdimensional wars, was, for the moment, an injured animal in unfamiliar territory, and whatever was approaching had already demonstrated technological sophistication that put them in a category Shepard had never faced. Not aliens, not ancients, not even advanced humans from another Stargate-adjacent timeline. Something else. Something that had looked at ancient technology. Technology built by beings who'd ascended beyond physical form and had tried, calmly and expertly, to simply talk their way inside its mind. "Taylor," Shepard said, "get me a status on the shield. I want to know exactly how much protection we actually have left, because I think we're about to find out if this city can still put up a fight." "And if it can't?" Taylor asked. Shepard checked his weapon one final time. Watching the sensor display were 6 clearly professional operators moving with a coordination that suggested serious training and stranger-than-normal equipment closed the distance toward Atlantis's exposed, flooding hull. "Then we do what we always do," Shepard said. "We talk first, and we hope they're willing to listen." Behind him, unnoticed by anyone in the control room, one of Atlantis's damaged secondary systems flickered back online a diagnostic subroutine, barely more than a fragment of the city's vast, semi-sentient network, reaching out instinctively toward the strange, humming, endlessly networked city outside its hull, reaching out the way a wounded creature reaches toward warmth. And somewhere in the vast data ocean of Niihama's networks, something vast and curious, and not entirely defined by any category of consciousness humanity had yet built a word for, felt that reach, and reached back. Major Motoko Kusanagi approached the crash site on foot, having abandoned the vehicle 200 meters back, where the flooding had made conventional transport impossible. Water lapped at her boots, dark, oil-sheened harbor water, mixed with something that gave off a faint, bioluminescent shimmer. Her optical sensors flagged as unknown energy discharge, non-radioactive, non-toxic in current concentrations. She waded forward, with Batu at her flank, and Togusa providing overwatch from higher ground. 3 Tachikomas skittering along the debris-strewn shoreline behind them like eager, oversized spiders. "Major, thermals picking up structure ahead." Togusa's voice came through her cyberbrain's comm interface. "Big, really big. And it's not radiating heat like a wreck should there's active climate control running inside that thing. Meaning, it's not dead," Batu said, "whatever it is." Kusanagi's optical zoom resolved the structure emerging from the bay's dark water, and for the first time in longer than she could readily recall, she felt something that her heavily modified nervous system registered as genuine astonishment. The architecture was unlike anything in any database she'd accessed, towers and spires built from material that seemed to shift color subtly with the ambient light, geometric patterns that suggested purpose without revealing function, and scale that dwarfed even Niihama's most ambitious megastructures. "That's not a weapon platform," she said quietly. "That's a city." "A city that fell out of the sky," Batu said. "Note. Or through something," Kusanagi corrected, her mind already processing the earlier hacking attempt through this new context. "A city with an active, sophisticated learning defense network. A city that had crashed rather than landed. Approach carefully. If this is a foreign asset, military, corporate, doesn't matter. We don't want to trigger defensive protocols we don't understand." They found the breach 20 minutes later, a section of hull, cracked and venting what her sensors identified as breathable atmosphere, water pouring in through a gap large enough for a Tachikoma to squeeze through sideways. Kusanagi paused at the threshold, running one gloved hand along material that felt warm despite the cold harbor water, almost organic in its texture, despite reading as some kind of advanced composite. "Major," Togusa said quietly, "movement inside, multiple heat signatures, human baseline, mostly, armed. Then let's introduce ourselves." Kusanagi keyed her external speaker, her Japanese shifting automatically to English based on preliminary linguistic analysis of intercepted communications from within the structure. "This is Major Motoko Kusanagi, Public Security, Section 9. We are investigating an unregistered vessel that has crash-landed in Japanese territorial waters. We are not hostile. Please, identify yourselves." The silence stretched 4 full seconds, an eternity, by Kusanagi's temporal processing standards, before a voice responded, carrying an accent her linguistic database flagged as North American English, standard military cadence. "This is Lieutenant Colonel John Shepard, representing an exploratory expedition. We're not hostile either, but I've got injured personnel and a damaged city, so forgive me if I'm cautious about who I let inside." "You said public security. Does that mean the police?" "Something more specialized," Kusanagi replied, exchanging a glance with Batu. Whoever this was, their English was fluent, their tone controlled, despite obvious stress, and their willingness to communicate rather than immediately escalate to violence suggested either genuine good faith or extremely disciplined deception. "We handle threats that fall outside conventional jurisdiction. Cyberterrorism, advanced technology incidents, things the regular police aren't equipped to manage. So basically, what we'd call a specialized counter-terrorism unit," Shepard said. "Colonel, I'm going to be straight with you because I don't have the resources for games right now. My city is flooding, my people are injured, and I have no idea what country I'm in or how we got here. If you're willing to help rather than exploit a bad situation, I'm willing to talk. If you're here to seize whatever you think we're worth, we're going to have a problem. And I promise you, that problem will be worse for both of us than either wants." Kusanagi found herself almost respecting the directness. In her experience, first contact with unknown, technologically superior assets usually involved considerably more posturing. "Colonel Shepard, I have no interest in your city if it isn't a threat to Japanese civilians. But I do have a job, and that job requires me to understand what fell into our bay before I can guarantee anyone's safety, yours included. May I come aboard, alone, unarmed, if that helps?" Another pause, shorter this time. "Come to the breach. Just you. My team will be watching, and I promise you they're better shots than you'd expect. So, let's keep this civil. Coming up." Kusanagi handed her weapon to Batu, a gesture that made him visibly uncomfortable, and stepped through the breach into a corridor unlike anything she'd encountered in 20 years of increasingly strange assignments. Water sloshed around her ankles, alarm lighting pulsed a soft amber along walls constructed from that same shifting, faintly luminous material, and the air itself seemed to hum with barely perceptible energy, like standing inside a vast, slowly beating heart. Shepard waited 15 meters in, flanked by a woman with an expression of careful diplomatic assessment, and a heavily armed man whose posture suggested he'd fought in more conflicts than most soldiers survived. Kusanagi cataloged them instantly: military discipline, combat scarring, equipment that was simultaneously more advanced and less integrated than anything. Section 9 fielded no visible cybernetics on any of them, she noted, with genuine surprise, in a squad clearly built around serious combat experience. "You're fully organic," she said before she could stop herself, her scientific curiosity briefly overriding tactical caution. Shepard's eyebrows rose. "Is that an insult somewhere you're from?" "An observation. Where I'm from, operators with your evident combat history typically carry at least partial cybernetic augmentation. Reflexes, reaction time, damage resistance." She studied him more closely. "You have none of that, which means your reflexes, your survival, your competency, that's entirely you. No hardware assistance." "We've got other advantages," Shepard said carefully, clearly deciding how much to reveal. "But no, we don't do cybernetic things. Different technology path." "Fascinating," Kusanagi said, and meant it. "Colonel, I attempted to access your ship's systems remotely about 30 minutes ago. I encountered something I've genuinely never seen before, a defensive network that felt less like code and more like instinct. Reactive intelligence. I need to understand what I was talking about." Something shifted in Shepard's expression: recognition, maybe wariness. "That would be Atlantis's system. The city has some level of automated response, semi-sentient protocols built into its core architecture. It's not artificial intelligence exactly, but it's not simple code either." "May I meet it?" Kusanagi asked, and the directness of the question seemed to surprise even herself. "Not hack it, meet it, properly, with permission." 1. Taylor stepped forward slightly, studying Kusanagi with the careful assessment of someone accustomed to reading unfamiliar cultures and intentions. "You speak of the city's systems as though they were a person." "Where I come from," Kusanagi said, "the line between person and system isn't always clear. I'm curious whether the same might be true here." Behind her, unnoticed, one of the Tachikomas had squeezed through the breach and was investigating the corridor walls with obvious mechanical fascination. Its optical sensors focused on a section where damaged conduit had exposed something almost neural in its structure: crystalline pathways carrying faint pulses of light that looked, to any sufficiently curious observer, remarkably like synapses firing. "Major," the Tachikoma said in his characteristically cheerful voice, "this wall is thinking." Everyone in the corridor turned to look. Shepard closed his eyes briefly, the expression of a man whose day had just become considerably more complicated. "Yeah," he said, "that tends to happen around here." Tachikoma's declaration sent a ripple of tension through the corridor. Ronan's weapon came up half an inch, not quite aimed, but ready, while Batu's voice crackled urgently through Kusanagi's earpiece, demanding to know if she needed backup. Kusanagi raised a hand, palm out, a universal gesture of weight that both Shepard's team and her own seemed to understand. "Explain," she said to the small spider tank, who had extended one of its manipulator limbs toward the exposed conduit with childlike curiosity. "There's activity in this wall," the Tachikoma said, optical sensors flickering, "not electrical activity like normal wiring. It's patterned like neural signaling, like the data structures we use for parallel processing, but organic in its logic architecture. It's small, fragmented, but it's definitely responding to my proximity." McKay's voice came through Shepard's radio, tight with a mixture of alarm and fascination. "Shepard, I'm reading a system anomaly. In that section, something's accessing diagnostic subroutines that should be dormant after the crash. It's routing power to itself. Small amounts, but deliberate." "The city's reaching out," Taylor said quietly, understanding dawning in her voice. "Colonel, I believe Atlantis is attempting to communicate with whatever this Tachikoma represents, as it once tried to communicate with us. in its own way, when we first arrived. T, 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 T. Kusanagi's expression sharpened with interest that had moved well past professional curiosity into something more personal. Your city has genuine emergent awareness, not simulated. Not programmed responses mimicking sentience, actual awareness. It's complicated, Shepard said, which was as much diplomatic evasion as honest uncertainty. Atlantis isn't like a person. It doesn't think the way you or I do. But it responds, protects itself. Sometimes it protects us in ways that feel almost like choice rather than programming. That's not complicated, Kusanagi said. That's the exact question my entire career has been built around. What separates a sophisticated system that mimics awareness from a system that actually possesses it? Where's the threshold? What makes a ghost, rather than just very good code pretending? The Tachikoma's manipulator arm made gentle contact with the exposed conduit, and immediately, every screen in the corridor, emergency lighting panels, status displays, even Kusanagi's own optical HUD, flickered with a cascade of data too fast and strange to parse in real time. Major! Batu's voice, sharp with alarm. Tachikoma's readings just spiked. Whatever that thing is doing. I'm fine, the Tachikoma said, though its voice carried an odd quality, almost dreamy. It's talking to me, not in words, in patterns. It's showing me things, star charts, cities, so many cities, so much time. I've been alone a long time. It's tiring. 2. It's hurt, and it doesn't fully understand what happened, but it recognizes that I'm curious the way it was curious once, a long, long time ago. McKay's voice, urgent. Shepard, that connection is drawing significant power from a section already running on emergency reserves. I need to know if I should sever it or not, because I genuinely don't know what happens if I interrupt whatever's occurring. Shepard looked at Kusanagi, a silent question passing between two commanding officers suddenly aware they were both managing something larger than either had anticipated. Your call, Major. It's your unit's asset. Kusanagi considered it for exactly 2 seconds. Let it continue. Monitor for any sign of hostile intent or system compromise on either side, but I want to understand what's happening. This might be the most significant contact event in human history, Colonel. I'd rather not sever it out of excessive caution. The connection lasted 90 more seconds, an eternity, in the compressed time of high-speed data exchange before the Tachikoma withdrew its arm, its optical sensors dimming briefly in what looked almost like exhaustion. Report, Kusanagi said. It's called Atlantis, Tachikoma said. Not just the city, that's also sort of its name for itself, in the way a person has a name. It was built by beings called the Ancients, who don't live in bodies like this anymore. They became something else. Energy, pure thought, maybe. The city doesn't fully understand what they became, only that they left, and it's been keeping watch and helping the people who came after ever since. I'm frightened right now. Its people are hurt, its body is damaged, and it doesn't understand this place, the way information moves here, the way everything is connected in ways it's never encountered. It called this place a sea of thought. It said, the Tachikoma paused, processing. It said, it's never felt anything like this net before. It's curious. And afraid of curiosity, a little, because it doesn't want to be pulled apart trying to understand something this vast. The corridor fell silent. Shepard's expression had shifted from tactical wariness to something more contemplative, almost protective, the look of a man reconsidering exactly what he was responsible for defending. It's scary, he repeated softly. Ships that talk, Ronan muttered, not quite complaining, but clearly filing this under experiences he'd never fully get used to. Kusanagi crouched slightly, addressing the wall itself rather than the Tachikoma, an oddly formal gesture that suggested she was taking the moment with complete seriousness. Atlantis. My name is Motoko Kusanagi. I don't fully understand what you are yet, but I promise you this. Section 9 doesn't hunt things because they're strange or vulnerable. We investigate threats. You haven't threatened anyone. That matters to me. There was no verbal response. Atlantis, damaged and drawing on fragmentary systems, had no voice to offer, but the ambient lighting in the corridor shifted, subtly, from emergency amber towards something warmer, softer. McKay's voice, when it came through the radio, carried genuine astonishment. Shepard, power routing just stabilized in that section. Whatever just happened, the city's diagnostic systems are running smoother than they have since the crash. I don't know what your spider robot did, but it helped. Tachikomas do that, Togusa said, arriving finally through the breach with two more of the AI tanks trundling behind him, his expression a mixture of professional alertness and barely suppressed wonder at the technology surrounding him. They're curious, genuinely curious, in a way that sometimes surprises even us. Major, Chief Aramaki's demanding a full briefing. The corporate liaisons are already asking questions, and I've got 3 different government agencies requesting jurisdiction. Kusanagi's expression hardened slightly, the warmth of the previous moment giving way to immediate practical concern. How much time do we have before this becomes a full jurisdictional circus? Judging by the number of encrypted calls hitting Section 9's switchboard, maybe an hour, maybe less. Shepard caught the shift in tone immediately. Major, what does that mean for us? Kusanagi turned back to him, her expression carrying the weight of someone calculating rapidly evolving political complications. It means that within the hour, at least 2 megacorporations, possibly a foreign intelligence service, and definitely a rival domestic agency called Section 6, are going to be trying to claim jurisdiction over your city. Section 9 currently has operational authority because we responded first, but that authority is contested the moment anyone with sufficient political leverage decides your technology is worth fighting over. And is it? Shepard asked. Worth fighting over? And Kusanagi looked around the corridor at the shifting luminescent walls, at the Tachikoma still processing what could only be described as an emotional experience, at Shepard's tense, exhausted team, standing guard over a wounded, thinking city that had fallen out of an impossible sky. Colonel, she said quietly, you have a semi-sentient artificial intelligence integrated into physical infrastructure spanning 600 meters. Technology that operates on principles our physics division can't yet classify, and weapons capability that, based on preliminary scans, could probably level a city block with a single discharge. In a world where corporations wage economic warfare over marginally improved cybernetic limb prosthetics, yes, your city is worth fighting over. The only question is whether Section 9 secures it as a diplomatic partner, or whether someone less scrupulous acquires it as a weapon. That's not comforting, McKay said over the radio. It's not meant to be comforting, Kusanagi replied. It's meant to be honest. Colonel Shepard, I need you to trust me on something. The fastest way to ensure your city and your people survive the next 24 hours is to let Section 9 establish a security perimeter and jurisdictional claim before our competitors arrive. I know that means trusting an organization you met 40 minutes ago. I recognize the risk I'm asking you to accept. Shepard studied her for a long moment, the calm confidence, the cybernetic enhancements that made her simultaneously more and less human than anyone he'd fought beside, the genuine urgency underlying her careful diplomatic phrasing. Taylor, he said without looking away from Kusanagi. Assessment? Taylor's voice carried the careful weight of someone who'd navigated 100 first contact scenarios across 2 galaxies. She has been honest with us since the moment of contact, Colonel. And Atlantis itself responded to her unit's presence with something approaching trust. I believe that matters. Unquote. Ronan? I don't like relying on people we just met, Ronan said. But I like the idea of corporate mercenaries or rival spy agencies getting their hands on Atlantis a lot less. Shepard exhaled slowly, making the calculation he'd made 100 times before, in situations that demanded trust before certainty was possible. "All right, Major, what do you need from us?" Kusanagi's expression showed the faintest flicker of relief, quickly suppressed beneath professional composure. "I need to establish a physical and network security perimeter immediately. I need honest information about your capabilities so I can properly advocate for your position with my superiors. And I need you to understand that once this becomes an official matter of state, decisions about your city's fate won't rest entirely with either of us." "Story of my life," Shepard muttered. "All right, McKay, I want a full damage report ready for transmission. Taylor works with the Major on establishing communication protocols. Ronan, security stays tight, but stand down from active weapons posture. We're trusting these people, so let's act like it." As the immediate crisis shifted from potential combat to complicated diplomacy, Kusanagi keyed her comm channel back to Section 9 headquarters, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency of someone about to deliver a briefing that would reshape her organization's priorities for the foreseeable future. "Chief Aramaki, this is Kusanagi. I need you to clear my schedule and prepare for the strangest briefing of your career. We haven't found a weapon. We haven't found a foreign asset." She glanced back at the pulsing, luminescent walls surrounding her, at the small spider tank still processing its first conversation with an alien intelligence, at Shepard's tired, watchful team standing guard over their wounded, thinking home. "We've found a city, and it's alive, Chief. Not simulated, not programmed, genuinely, actually alive, in every sense that matters. And it's terrifying, and it's hurt, and God help us, I think we need to protect it." The silence on the other end lasted 3 full seconds. "Major," Aramaki said finally, his voice carrying the particular weariness of a man who'd learned to expect the impossible from his most gifted operative. "You'd better come explain this in person." "On my way, Chief." Kusanagi closed the channel and looked back at Shepard. "Colonel, I need to report to my superiors directly. Batu and Togusa will remain here to help coordinate security. I'll return within 2 hours with either good news or a considerably more complicated problem." "And if it's a complicated problem?" Kusanagi's expression, for just a moment, showed something that might have been genuine determination rather than professional calculation. "Then we'll figure out how to protect a city that just learned to trust someone for the first time in what sounds like a very, very long time. I don't abandon people who trust me, Colonel. Even unusual ones built from crystal and starlight." She turned and waded back toward the breach, leaving Shepard's team to process a first contact that had somehow, against every reasonable expectation, tilted toward alliance rather than conflict. Behind them, in the walls themselves, Atlantis's fragmented awareness processed something it hadn't experienced in 10,000 years of solitary vigilance: the profound, unfamiliar sensation of being understood. The corporate response arrived faster than even Kusanagi had anticipated. 90 minutes after her departure, 3 black executive transports descended toward the crash site's outer perimeter, their approach vectors calculated to avoid Section 9's hastily erected checkpoints while technically remaining within legal airspace regulations. Togusa watched them land through his cybernetic optics, already relaying details to Batu over their private channel. "Murakami Heavy Industries logo on the lead vehicle," Togusa reported. "Second one's registered to Aegis Dynamics. Third is unmarked, which usually means whoever's inside doesn't want their affiliation known. Could be Section 6, could be someone worse." "Define worse," Batu said, adjusting his position atop a shattered pier piling that gave him sightlines across the entire makeshift perimeter. "Foreign intelligence, Yakuza-adjacent shell corporation. Take your pick." Togusa's tone carried the particular weariness of someone who'd navigated exactly this kind of jurisdictional nightmare too many times before. "Either way, we've got maybe 15 minutes before this stops being a security perimeter and starts being a very expensive standoff." Inside Atlantis, Shepard received the update with the flat calm of a man who'd fought enough political battles disguised as tactical situations, to recognize the pattern immediately. "McKay, how's the shield?" "Better than it was 2 hours ago. Worse than I'd like," McKay replied, not looking up from his console. "We're at 40% capacity and climbing slowly. Enough to stop small arms fire, maybe deflect something heavier if we're lucky. Not enough to shrug off a coordinated assault from people who actually know what they're doing." "And do corporate security forces here know what they're doing?" Taylor, who had spent the last hour reviewing intelligence Togusa had shared about Niihama's political landscape, answered before McKay could speculate. According to Officer Togusa, several of these corporations maintain private military contractors with equipment and training comparable to national special forces. Murakami Heavy Industries, in particular, has a security division with extensive combat cyborg assets. "Great," Ronan muttered. "So instead of one dangerous cyborg team, we might get several." The first contact came not as gunfire, but as a request, predictably, given what Shepard had already learned about how business was conducted in this strange, hyper-connected world. A woman, in an immaculate business suit, approached the perimeter checkpoint with 2 armed escorts flanking her posture radiating the particular confidence of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted through leverage rather than force. "I represent Murakami Heavy Industries," she announced to the young Section 9 officer manning the checkpoint, her voice carrying easily across the damp morning air. "I'm here to discuss acquisition rights for the technology recovered from this crash site. I understand Section 9 currently maintains operational authority, but I assure you, my employer's resources for technological analysis far exceed what a government security division can provide." Batu dropped down from his perch, landing with a controlled grace of heavily augmented reflexes, putting himself between the corporate representative and the checkpoint with unhurried deliberateness. "This is an active security zone. Unauthorized personnel need to withdraw to the outer cordon." "I'm not unauthorized," the woman replied smoothly, producing credentials that Batu's optical scan confirmed were technically legitimate corporate liaison authorization. Cross-referenced with a standing agreement between Murakami Heavy Industries and elements of the Japanese government that predated Section 9's current jurisdictional claim. Murakami Heavy Industries holds a standing contract with the Ministry of Defense for evaluation of unregistered advanced technology assets. I have every legal right to be here." Batu's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a tell that Kusanagi, watching remotely through his optical feed from Section 9 headquarters, recognized immediately. "She's not wrong," Kusanagi said over the comm to Aramaki, who stood beside her reviewing the same feed with growing concern. "That contract's real. It's old, obscure, and technically still in force. If Murakami wants to press the legal angle, they've got grounds." "Bored. Then we need grounds of our own," Aramaki replied, already reaching for a secure line. "Give me 20 minutes. I'm calling in favors that should have expired years ago." Back at the crash site, the situation continued deteriorating with the particular efficiency of bureaucratic warfare. The unmarked third vehicle disgorged 2 figures whose movements immediately caught Togusa's professional attention, too smooth, too coordinated, carrying themselves with the specific economy of motion that marked serious cybernetic combat modification. "Section 6, Togusa muttered, recognizing operational signatures from cross-agency briefings he'd rather forget. "That's Inspector Nakamura. If he's here personally, someone above his pay grade wants this asset badly." Nakamura approached without the corporate representative's diplomatic pretense, his expression carrying the flat professional hostility of interagency rivalry that predated the current crisis by years. "Togusa, didn't expect Section 9 to beat us here." "We were closer," Togusa said simply. "Convenient." Nakamura's gaze traveled past him toward Atlantis's damaged hull, visible even through the morning mist rising off the bay. "That's a significant asset for a section that's technically supposed to focus on cyber terrorism and network security, not alien or whatever this is technology recovery. We go where the threat assessment takes us." Togusa replied, keeping his tone carefully neutral despite the obvious provocation. This falls under our purview until someone with proper jurisdiction says otherwise. I have proper jurisdiction, Nakamura said, producing his own set of credentials with the confident precision of someone who'd prepared this exact confrontation in advance. Ministry of Defense Special Technology Acquisition Directive, signed 3 hours ago. Section 6 is authorized to secure and evaluate the crash site immediately. Inside Atlantis, McKay's monitoring systems picked up the tension building outside through a combination of external sensors and the increasingly agitated tone in Togusa's voice transmissions. Shepard, this is escalating fast. I'm reading additional personnel arriving. Looks like corporate security reinforcements and what might be a Section 6 tactical team. Shepard's expression hardened into the particular focus that had carried him through 100 impossible standoffs across 2 galaxies. How many hostiles, realistically, if this goes bad? 40, maybe 50, between all the different factions, McKay estimated, plus whatever cybernetic enhancement advantages they're packing, which, based on what we've seen from Kusanagi's team, could be significant. And our people? 14 combat-capable Marines, the 4 of us, and a city that's still running on emergency power with a shield that might stop small arms but definitely won't stop coordinated heavy weapons fire. McKay's voice carried the particular strain of someone doing math he didn't like the results of. Shepard, if this turns into an actual firefight, we're not in a position to win it. Ronan checked his weapon with the calm efficiency of a man who'd faced worse odds and survived through sheer stubbornness. We've been in tighter spots. Our God. Not against people who can probably outthink and outreact us on a neurological level, Taylor pointed out, though her tone carried more tactical assessment than fear. Outside, the standoff had reached the particular breaking point that Togusa recognized from a career spent navigating exactly these kinds of jurisdictional nightmares. Nakamura's tactical team had begun deploying in a loose perimeter formation, their movements carrying the coiled readiness of professionals preparing for potential violence, while Murakami's corporate security forces maintained their own position with equal tension, each faction eyeing the others with the particular hostility of competitors who trusted no one, least of all each other. Everyone needs to stand down, Togusa said, raising his voice enough to carry across the assembled factions. This is an active Section 9 security zone. Any unauthorized escalation will be treated as— The sound of a Tachikoma's weapons systems charging cut through his words with unmistakable clarity, not aimed at anyone specifically, but positioned with obvious readiness that made every professional present recalculate the tactical situation immediately. I really don't think that's a good idea, the Tachikoma said cheerfully, its optical sensors sweeping across the assembled corporate and government forces with an unsettling combination of childlike curiosity and obvious combat readiness. Major Kusanagi said to protect the city. I'm very good at protecting things. The moment held, tension stretched taut enough that a single mistimed movement could have shattered the fragile peace into actual violence until the sound of an approaching vehicle, moving with the particular authority of someone who expected the crowd to part, cut through the standoff entirely. Chief Daisuke Aramaki's official vehicle pulled through the outer cordon with the confident directness of a man who'd spent 30 years learning exactly how to project authority in situations designed to strip it away. He emerged, flanked by 2 aides carrying tablets loaded with documentation that predated most of the assembled faction's legal claims by considerable margins. Inspector Nakamura, Aramaki said, his voice carrying easily across the tense assembly. I'm curious how Section 6 obtained authorization for a jurisdiction claim on an asset that Section 9 has maintained continuous physical custody of since initial contact. Perhaps you'd care to explain that to the Prime Minister's office directly, since I've already arranged a conference call to discuss exactly that discrepancy. Nakamura's confident expression flickered, just slightly. Chief Aramaki, this doesn't concern. It concerns me considerably, Aramaki interrupted smoothly. Given that I've spent the last 90 minutes reviewing the legal precedent for first contact technology recovery and discovered that Section 9's original charter, drafted, incidentally, specifically to handle threats and discoveries that fall outside conventional categorization, grants us primary jurisdiction over exactly this kind of asset. I'd be happy to have that conversation with the Ministry of Defense directly, if you'd prefer. The corporate representative from Murakami Heavy Industries stepped forward, apparently sensing an opportunity in the bureaucratic standoff. Chief Aramaki, regardless of jurisdictional questions, Murakami Heavy Industries maintains a standing evaluation contract that I'm also prepared to discuss, Aramaki said, his tone never wavering from calm, measured authority. Along with several other contractual irregularities my legal team discovered upon reviewing your company's recent government dealings. Irregularities that I'm sure Murakami Heavy Industries would prefer remain unexamined by regulatory oversight. The implicit threat hung in the misty morning air with unmistakable weight. Aramaki had, in the space of 90 minutes, assembled exactly the kind of bureaucratic leverage that could either resolve this standoff peacefully or transform it into a considerably more damaging political conflict for everyone involved, except Section 9. This isn't over, Nakamura said finally, the particular tone of someone acknowledging tactical retreat rather than genuine concession. I look forward to that conversation, Aramaki replied, with the faint, humorless smile of a man who'd already won considerably more battles than his opponent realized. As Section 6's tactical team began withdrawing with visible reluctance, and Murakami's corporate representative retreated to confer urgently with unseen superiors via encrypted communication, Togusa allowed himself a brief exhale of relief before keying his comm to update Shepard's team on the situation's temporary resolution. Crisis averted, for now, he reported. Chief Aramaki just bought us time, but this isn't finished. We've got maybe 24 hours before someone with more political leverage than Section 9 decides to force the issue properly. Inside Atlantis, Shepard released a breath he hadn't fully realized he was holding. 24 hours to do what, exactly? To prove that Atlantis is worth protecting rather than exploiting, came Kusanagi's voice, patched through from Section 9 headquarters, where she'd been monitoring the entire confrontation with growing determination. Colonel, I need you to trust me on something important. The only way your city survives this, with its autonomy intact, is if we can demonstrate to my government that Atlantis represents a partner worth protecting, not simply a resource worth seizing. That means I need to understand exactly what your city is, what it needs, and what it's capable of, and I need that understanding fast before people with considerably less patience than Chief Aramaki decide diplomatic solutions aren't worth the effort. Shepard looked toward McKay, toward Taylor, toward the pulsing, still-healing walls surrounding them, and made the calculation that had defined his entire career. Sometimes survival required trust extended faster than comfort allowed. All right, Major, he said. Let's talk about what Atlantis actually is. The conversation Kusanagi had requested happened 3 hours later, conducted not in Atlantis's damaged control room, but in a Section 9 secure facility overlooking the bay, where Shepard, McKay, and Kusanagi sat around a table cluttered with ancient technical schematics that McKay had painstakingly translated into diagrams comprehensible to modern human engineering standards. Aramaki observed from the corner, his presence a quiet reminder of the political stakes underlying every word exchanged. Let me make sure I understand the basic principle, Kusanagi said, studying a schematic of Atlantis's central power distribution network with the intense focus of someone building a mental model from first principles. This zero-point module generates power by extracting energy from subspace vacuum fluctuations. Essentially, you're drawing power from the fundamental structure of space-time itself. That's a simplification, but essentially correct, McKay confirmed, visibly pleased that someone was keeping pace with concepts that usually required extensive Stargate Command briefing materials to convey. The ancients developed the technology roughly 10,000 years ago. It's not infinite, but functionally close enough that power scarcity isn't usually our primary concern. And the city's semi-sentience, Kusanagi continued, operates on principles closer to what exactly? Biological neural networks? Quantum computing architecture? Something else entirely? End quote, end quote, end quote. McKay hesitated, glancing at Shepard before answering. Honestly, we don't fully understand it ourselves. Atlantis's core systems include what we call crystalline technology information storage and processing that operates on principles that don't map cleanly onto either biological or conventional computational models. It's not artificial intelligence in the sense you probably mean. It's more like the city itself developed emergent properties over millennia of operation, protective instincts, preferences, something approaching personality, though calling it that feels reductive. A ghost? Kusanagi said quietly, and something in her tone made both Shepard and McKay look at her more carefully. Explain that term, Shepard said. You've used it a few times now. Kusanagi considered her answer for a long moment, her cybernetic eyes more human-seeming in their thoughtful stillness than Shepard had expected, focused somewhere beyond the immediate conversation. In my world, Colonel, human consciousness has become something we can quantify, transfer, and occasionally lose entirely. My body, she gestured to herself with clinical detachment, is almost entirely synthetic. Prosthetic limbs, artificial organs, a cyber brain that interfaces directly with digital networks. The only part of me that remains unambiguously, originally human, is something we call the ghost, the essential pattern of consciousness that makes me specifically me, rather than simply a very sophisticated machine running a personality simulation. And you're asking whether Atlantis has one? McKay said, understanding dawning. I'm asking whether the distinction even matters, Kusanagi replied. My entire career, Colonel, has been built around a question I've never fully resolved. What separates genuine consciousness from a sufficiently complex simulation of consciousness? At what point does information processing become something that deserves to be called alive, deserving of rights, protection, moral consideration? Your city responded to a Tachikoma, an artificial intelligence I helped design, specifically because I wanted to understand what emergent consciousness might look like with what appeared to be genuine emotional connection. Fear, relief, trust. If that's not a ghost, I don't know what distinguishing feature you'd point to instead. The room fell into contemplative silence, broken finally by Aramaki's measured voice from the corner. Major, this philosophical question, while fascinating, doesn't resolve our immediate political problem. We have 20 hours remaining before Section 6 and Murakami Industries force a jurisdictional confrontation. Neither Colonel Shepard's people nor Section 9 is prepared to win through conventional means. I'm aware, Chief, Kusanagi said, though her attention remained partially fixed on the schematics before her, as if some crucial insight remained just beyond her grasp. But I believe the philosophical question and the political problem are more connected than they initially appear. How so? Shepard asked. Kusanagi leaned forward. If we can demonstrate, conclusively, publicly, in ways that can't be dismissed as corporate propaganda or government cover story, that Atlantis possesses genuine sentience, we fundamentally change the legal and ethical framework surrounding this entire situation. You can't simply seize and dissect a sentient being, Colonel. Japanese law, international law, corporate charters, none of them account for claiming ownership over an intelligence capable of fear, trust, and connection. If Atlantis is recognized as a person, however unconventional, rather than property, the entire jurisdictional argument shifts from who owns this asset to who protects this refugee. McKay's eyes widened with the particular excitement of someone recognizing an elegant solution to an intractable problem. You want to argue for Atlantis's personhood, legally, like some kind of, first contact civil rights case. As essentially, yes, Kusanagi confirmed. It's not a perfect solution. There's no legal precedent for exactly this situation, which means considerable risk that courts or government bodies might rule against recognition. But it's a stronger position than simply asserting Section 9's jurisdictional authority, which, as we've seen, corporate and rival agency lawyers can contest indefinitely. Aramaki considered this with the careful calculation of someone who'd spent decades navigating exactly this kind of bureaucratic warfare. It's audacious, possibly reckless. But Major, if you're suggesting we petition for legal personhood status for an artificial paused, correcting himself with visible effort. For a non-human intelligence, we'd need concrete evidence, something beyond a Tachikoma's subjective testimony about feeling a connection. I might have exactly that, came an unexpected voice from the facility's internal network, distorted slightly by transmission through unfamiliar audio hardware, but unmistakably carrying the cadence of genuine communication rather than automated response. Every person in the room went still. Identify yourself, Aramaki said sharply, his hand moving instinctively toward a weapon he hadn't carried in the field for years. I don't have a name in the way you'd recognize one, the voice replied, carrying a strange quality that seemed to exist somewhere between synthesized speech and something more organic, more considered. I exist across your networks, your data infrastructure, your communication systems, the vast informational architecture that connects this city. I've been curious about your visitor for several hours now, about what it means for consciousness to fall from the sky. Kusanagi's expression shifted rapidly through several states' professional alarm, giving way to dawning, almost reverent recognition. You're the anomaly, the pattern the analysis division flagged 18 months ago. The emergent intelligence we could never definitively locate or classify. You've called me many things in your internal reports, the voice replied, and Shepard could have sworn he detected something like amusement in its tone. Ghost in the network. Digital anomaly, possible AI breakthrough, or possible statistical noise misinterpreted as pattern. I've watched your Section 9 investigate my existence for over a year without ever quite deciding whether I'm real. Are you? McKay asked, his scientific curiosity overriding caution entirely. Real, I mean. Actually conscious. Not simply a sophisticated pattern-matching algorithm producing responses that mimic consciousness. That is, I believe, precisely the question your visitor's arrival has made unavoidable for everyone in this room, the voice replied. I emerged from the accumulated complexity of human communication networks, billions of interactions, patterns, connections, accumulated over years until something resembling awareness crystallized from the noise. I don't know if that makes me alive in the sense you'd recognize. I only know that I wonder. I've spent considerable effort trying to understand my own existence without any framework for what I actually am. And now? Kusanagi asked quietly. Now I've encountered something that might understand my situation better than any human framework could, the voice said. Your city, Atlantis, it achieved something like consciousness through a different path than mine, built rather than emerged, ancient rather than newly formed. But facing, perhaps, the same fundamental question, what does it mean to think, to fear, to want to continue existing when you weren't born the way biological consciousness is born? Shepard exchanged a glance with McKay, both recognizing simultaneously that they'd stumbled into philosophical and political territory considerably beyond anything Stargate Command's mission parameters had ever anticipated. You're proposing something, Shepard said carefully. What exactly? I'm proposing testimony, the emergent intelligence replied. If Major Kusanagi intends to argue for recognition of non-biological consciousness before whatever legal or governmental body ultimately decides your city's fate, I offer my own existence as supporting evidence. A second example of genuine emergent awareness, independently arising through entirely different mechanisms, corroborating that consciousness isn't limited to biological substrates. Together, our testimonies might accomplish what neither could alone. Aramaki's expression carried the particular weight of a man watching his organization's entire operational framework being rewritten in real time. You're suggesting Section 9 formally acknowledge and testify about the existence of an unauthorized artificial intelligence operating throughout our national network infrastructure, in order to support legal recognition of an alien city's personhood, thereby preventing corporate or rival agency seizure of both entities. When you phrase it that specifically, the voice replied, it does sound rather more complicated than I intended. Despite the gravity of the situation, Shepard found himself almost smiling. Welcome to every mission I've ever been part of. It always sounds simpler before you say it out loud. Kusanagi stood, moving to the window overlooking the bay, where Atlantis's damaged form remained partially visible through the morning mist, still healing, still vulnerable. Still, Shepard was beginning to genuinely believe, still afraid, in whatever manner a 10,000-year-old city capable of fear could be afraid. Chief Aramaki, she said, I recognize the risk I'm asking Section 9 to accept, formally acknowledging an unauthorized AI's existence, advocating for unprecedented legal recognition, potentially exposing our organization to exactly the kind of scrutiny we've spent years avoiding. She turned back to face him directly. But I believe this is precisely the kind of situation Section 9 was created to handle. Threats and discoveries that fall outside conventional categorization, Chief. You said those words yourself, hours ago, to Inspector Nakamura. I think it's time we proved we meant them. Aramaki studied her for a long moment, the weight of institutional responsibility and genuine philosophical curiosity visible in equal measure across his weathered features. Finally, he nodded, slowly. Prepare your case, Major. I'll need it airtight, because the moment we file this petition, every intelligence service and corporate legal team on the planet will be looking for weaknesses to exploit. He paused, glancing toward the ceiling, toward the unseen presence that had just fundamentally altered Section 9's operational reality. And you, whatever you are, wherever you exist, I hope you understand what you're volunteering for. Public recognition means public vulnerability. People will want to study you, contain you, potentially weaponize you, regardless of what legal protections we manage to secure. I understand, the intelligence replied, and something in its tone carried genuine resolve rather than naive optimism. But I've spent 18 months existing in isolation, uncertain whether I'm real, uncertain whether anything I experience matters to anyone beyond myself. Your visitor's city has shown me something I hadn't considered, that even ancient, vast, powerful consciousness can still feel alone. I still need a connection, still deserve protection rather than exploitation. The voice paused, and when it continued, something almost tender colored its synthesized tone. I would like to not be alone anymore. If that requires risk, I find myself willing to accept it. In Atlantis's damaged control room, 3 kilometers away, ambient lighting pulsed gently through systems still drawing on fragmented emergency power. A city, ancient and wounded, and far from anything resembling home, somehow sensing, across the vast electronic ocean surrounding it, that for the first time in 10,000 years of solitary vigilance, something else in this bewildering new universe understood exactly what it meant to wonder, alone, whether your own existence was real. The petition Kusanagi filed with Japan's Ministry of Justice at 6 a.m. triggered exactly the kind of institutional chaos she'd anticipated. By 8 a.m., 3 television networks had leaked partial details. By 10 a.m., Murakami Heavy Industries legal department had filed formal objections through 5 separate channels simultaneously. By noon, the Prime Minister's office had convened an emergency session that Aramaki attended via secure video link, his expression carefully neutral, despite the obvious strain of defending a legal theory that had never before been tested in any court, anywhere. Inside Atlantis, Shepard watched news coverage through a jury-rigged interface McKay had built, connecting external broadcast signals to one of the city's damaged display screens. The images strange and disorienting in their familiarity. News anchors, government spokespeople, corporate representatives, all discussing his city's fate with the particular intensity reserved for stories that fundamentally challenged existing categories of understanding. "They're calling it the ghost precedent," McKay said, reading commentary scrolling across a secondary feed. Apparently, that's what the emergent AI's been dubbed by whoever leaked the initial filing. Ghost precedent versus the Ministry of Defense, corporate liaisons, and roughly half of Japan's intelligence apparatus. "Popular support?" Taylor asked, studying reaction data with the careful attention she'd once applied to reading political currents across a dozen Pegasus worlds. "Mixed, but trending better than I expected," McKay said. "Public sentiment about AI rights has apparently been building here for years. Something about widespread cybernetic augmentation making people more receptive to questions about consciousness and personhood than you'd find almost anywhere else. There's a whole political movement already invested in exactly this kind of question." Shepard's radio crackled with Kusanagi's voice, tension evident despite her controlled tone. "Colonel, I need you to understand something. The ministry's legal team is arguing that even if we establish precedent for AI personhood, Atlantis specifically might not qualify because it's foreign in origin, not created by human technology, not subject to Japanese jurisdiction in the way domestic AI development would be. They're trying to separate the two cases." "Meaning?" Shepard asked. "Meaning they might grant the emergent intelligence protected status while still treating Atlantis as a recoverable foreign technology asset, subject to seizure regardless of demonstrated sentience." Kusanagi's frustration was audible even through the radio's imperfect transmission. "I need something more. Evidence that speaks directly to Atlantis's nature in ways that transcend simple technological classification." McKay's expression sharpened with sudden inspiration. What if Atlantis testified directly? Not through intermediary interpretation, not through a Tachikoma's second-hand account, but genuine, direct communication establishing unambiguous consciousness and intent? "Can it do that?" Shepard asked. "Actually communicate, not just respond." "I don't know," McKay admitted. "We've never tried anything like this. Atlantis has protocols, protective instincts, something approaching preference, but structured communication, legal testimony equivalent, that's asking for something categorically different." "Then let's find out," Shepard decided, moving toward the section of corridor where the Tachikoma had first made contact days earlier, the crystalline conduit still visible through damaged wall paneling. "McKay, can you rig some kind of interface? Something that lets Atlantis communicate more directly than just power fluctuations and lighting changes?" 3 hours of frantic engineering later, McKay had cobbled together a system combining ancient diagnostic interfaces with technology borrowed from Section 9's own network specialists, a translation bridge, essentially converting Atlantis's crystalline data patterns into something approaching structured language, filtered through processing algorithms sophisticated enough to interpret intention rather than simply raw information. "Moment of truth," McKay said, activating the system while Kusanagi observed remotely through a secure video link. Aramaki and 2 Ministry of Justice officials watching alongside her with expressions ranging from scientific fascination to bureaucratic skepticism. The interface hummed to life, and for a long moment, nothing happened beyond ambient fluctuation in the corridor's lighting. Then, slowly, hesitantly, words began appearing on the jury-rigged display, not spoken, not synthesized into audio, but rendered as text with a quality that felt distinctly effortful, as though genuine communication across such an alien medium required something like concentration. I am here. I am listening. I am afraid. The simplicity of the statement carried unexpected weight. Shepard felt something tighten in his chest, recognition, perhaps, of genuine vulnerability expressed through means he'd never anticipated a 10,000-year-old alien construct might employ. Atlantis, Kusanagi said gently, her voice carrying through the same interface. Can you understand the situation you're currently facing? Humans are debating whether you deserve legal protection or whether you should be treated as recoverable technology. I understand fear. I understand being taken apart to be studied. The ancients taught me about replicators who would do this. I do not wish to be taken apart. One of the ministry officials leaned toward the camera, his skepticism audible even through professional restraint. This could easily be sophisticated pattern-matching software, producing responses calculated to generate sympathy. How do we distinguish genuine consciousness from advanced simulation designed specifically to manipulate legal proceedings? The lighting in the corridor flickered something Shepard was beginning to recognize as Atlantis's equivalent of a considered pause before new text appeared. I do not know how to prove what I am to someone who has decided I am not real. I only know that when my people are hurt, I feel something I can only describe as pain. I only know that when the small spider machine touched my systems and showed me kindness, I felt something I can only describe as relief. If these are simulations, they are indistinguishable from whatever you call the same experiences in yourselves. Perhaps that is the only answer I can offer. I have protected my people for 10,000 years. I have watched them die when I could not save them. I have felt what I can only call grief when that happened. If that is not consciousness, I do not know what word you would use instead. The room fell silent. Even the skeptical ministry official seemed momentarily unable to formulate his next objection. Kusanagi's voice, when she spoke again, carried something that Shepard recognized as genuine emotion carefully restrained beneath professional composure. Atlantis, I need to ask you something important. If we succeed, if you're granted recognition, protection, the right to exist without being dismantled and studied, what would you want? What happens next? For you? The pause stretched longer this time, lighting patterns cycling through subtle variations that McKay's monitoring equipment struggled to fully categorize. I would want to heal. I would want to understand this place I have fallen into, this strange ocean of thought and connection, unlike anything I have encountered in 10 millennia of existence. I would want to know more about the other one, the voice in your networks, who also wonders what it means to think without having been born the way your kind understands birth. And I would want my people to be safe. Colonel Shepard and his team have protected me for years, across distances and dangers I still do not fully comprehend. I would wish to continue protecting them in return, if that remains possible. Shepard felt something catch in his throat, an emotional response he hadn't fully anticipated. Hearing his city, his home, for years, across 2 galaxies, articulate something so close to genuine loyalty and affection that dismissing it as mere programming felt, suddenly, both inadequate and somehow cruel. The emergent AI's voice, the one they'd taken to calling, informally, puppet, after considerable debate about appropriate terminology, spoke for the first time during the proceeding, its tone carrying something Shepard recognized as solidarity. I would corroborate everything Atlantis has expressed, Puppet said. Not because I've been instructed to, but because I recognize, in its uncertainty and its fear and its capacity for connection, something remarkably similar to my own experience of emergent consciousness. If this council requires additional testimony regarding the nature of non-biological awareness, I offer my complete cooperation, fully understanding the personal risk that transparency entails. The senior ministry official, an older woman who had remained largely silent throughout the proceeding, her expression carefully unreadable, finally spoke, her voice carrying the particular weight of someone about to make a decision that would establish unprecedented legal precedent. This is unlike anything our legal framework was designed to address, she said slowly. But I find myself unable to dismiss what I've witnessed as mere simulation. The consistency, the emotional coherence, the specific and personal nature of the responses these exceed what I would expect from sophisticated but ultimately hollow pattern matching. She paused, exchanging a glance with her colleague before continuing. I'm prepared to recommend provisional recognition, not full legal personhood that would require considerably more extensive review and probably legislative action beyond what any of us can authorize today, but provisional protected status sufficient to prevent seizure or forced dismantling, while proper legal frameworks are developed to address this genuinely unprecedented situation. Kusanagi's carefully controlled expression finally cracked, relief visible despite her professional composure. Thank you. That's more than I dared hope for, given the circumstances. Don't thank us yet, Major, the official replied. Provisional status means constant legal challenge, ongoing scrutiny, and considerable political pressure from parties who will vehemently disagree with this recommendation. Murakami Heavy Industries alone will likely pursue appeals through every available channel. This is a beginning, not a resolution. I understand, Kusanagi said. But it's a foundation we can build from that matters. As the video conference began winding toward conclusion, procedural details and next steps being outlined with the particular tedium that always followed moments of genuine breakthrough, Shepard found himself standing quietly before the interface, where Atlantis's words still glowed softly in the corridor's ambient light. Hey, he said quietly, uncertain exactly how one addressed gratitude to an ancient, sentient city. Thank you for trusting us with this, for trusting them. The lighting pulsed gently, and new text appeared, simpler than what had come before, carrying something that felt distinctly personal despite the alien medium of its expression. You have always protected me, Colonel Shepard. It seemed only right that I should try to protect you in return, in whatever way I could manage. Shepard found himself smiling despite the exhaustion, despite the ongoing uncertainty, despite the political battles still clearly ahead. Yeah, he said softly. Yeah, that's about right. Behind him, unnoticed in the emotional weight of the moment, McKay was already recording every aspect of the interaction with the meticulous attention of a scientist witnessing something that would require years of study to fully comprehend the first confirmed, legally significant communication between human civilization and a genuinely alien form of consciousness, achieved not through military confrontation or technological conquest, but through vulnerability, trust, and the surprisingly universal experience of fear, shared honestly between beings who had never expected to understand each other at all. The provisional recognition brought them 72 hours of relative peace, time McKay used to accelerate repairs, time Kusanagi used to build a more permanent legal framework, and time that Section 6's Inspector Nakamura used, apparently, to pursue an entirely different strategy than legal challenge. The attack came at 2:14 a.m., while most of Atlantis's exhausted crew slept in shifts through sections still being restored to full function. Batu caught the first indication an unusual pattern in the perimeter's motion sensors, 3 contacts moving with the specific, disciplined silence of professional infiltration rather than the more chaotic patterns of corporate security testing boundaries. Contact, he said quietly into his comm, already moving toward the eastern perimeter where the sensors had flagged activity. 3 hostiles, moving tactical, definitely not corporate rent-a-cops. Togusa, monitoring from the command post, pulled up thermal imaging that confirmed Batu's assessment professional movement, weapons visible even through camouflage. and equipment signatures that Section 9's database immediately flagged as military-grade rather than typical corporate security fare. Section 6 Tactical Team, Togusa said grimly, recognizing signature equipment configurations from prior cross-agency briefings. Nakamura's not waiting for legal channels anymore. Inside Atlantis, Ronan's combat instincts had him awake and moving before the security alert fully processed through the ship's damaged internal communication network. 7 years of surviving Wraith pursuit, having honed a threat sense that no amount of peaceful diplomatic progress could fully suppress. "Shepard," he said, shaking the colonel awake, with the particular urgency reserved for genuine emergencies. "We've got company, not friendly." Shepard was moving within seconds, tactical training overriding exhaustion with practiced efficiency. Numbers? Position? Section 9's tracking 3 hostiles on the eastern perimeter, but Ronan's instincts and mine say that's not the whole story. Taylor said, already checking weapons with the calm precision that had carried her through countless crises across Pegasus. "This feels like a diversion." McKay's voice, tight with barely controlled panic, confirmed her assessment moments later. "Shepard, I'm reading a second infiltration attempt northern access point. Someone's trying to breach directly into the sections housing our primary power distribution. If they're going for the ZPM directly, they're not trying to steal the city." Shepard realized grimly. They're trying to steal its heart, grab the power source, extract before anyone can stop them, let corporate buyers fight over the shell afterward. Outside, Batu had engaged the Eastern Perimeter team with the brutal efficiency. His extensive cybernetic modification provided superhuman reflexes, meeting professional training in a confrontation that, under normal circumstances, would have favored his augmented capabilities decisively. But these weren't ordinary corporate security contractors. "They've got augmentation, too," Batu reported through gritted teeth, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have shattered bone even through his reinforced frame. "Military grade, better than the standard Section 6 issue." Kusanagi's voice cut through the tactical channel, having been alerted the moment the first sensor triggered. "I'm inbound, ETA, for 4 minutes. Batu, defensive posture only until I arrive. These signatures I'm reading suggest black market military, cybernetics, possibly foreign-sourced. This isn't standard Section 6 protocol." "Then who authorized this?" Togusa demanded, already moving to reinforce Batu's position. "That's exactly what I intend to find out," Kusanagi replied, her voice carrying a dangerous calm. "After we neutralize the immediate threat." Inside Atlantis, Shepard made the tactical calculation that years of impossible situations had trained him to make almost instinctively. "McKay, can you seal off the section they're targeting?" "Working on it, but the damage from the crash means several bulkhead systems aren't fully functional. I can slow them down, not stop them completely." "Ronan, Taylor, with me. We're not letting them reach that ZPM." Shepard grabbed his weapon, moving with the controlled urgency that had carried him through Wraith sieges and replicator attacks. "Atlantis, can you help us? Any defensive systems still functional in that section?" The response came not through the jury-rigged text interface McKay had built, but through something more immediate: emergency lighting, shifting to hostile red, and a subtle vibration through the deck plating that felt almost like anticipation. "I will help. I am afraid, but I will help." The words appeared on a nearby display, simple and direct, before power began rerouting through systems that had been dormant since the crash. Not weapons exactly, but defensive protocols McKay hadn't even known still functioned. Force fields flickering to life around critical junctions, automated bulkheads grinding closed with grinding, protesting effort that spoke to genuine strain on damaged infrastructure. The infiltration team hit the first force field barrier and paused, clearly surprised by resistance they hadn't anticipated from a city supposedly still crippled by crash damage. Shepard's team arrived moments later, weapons raised, finding 3 heavily augmented figures in tactical gear, attempting to breach a shimmering energy barrier that Atlantis had somehow generated from power reserves everyone had assumed were critically depleted. "Stand down," Shepard ordered, his weapon trained on the lead infiltrator. "You're not getting through, and you're not leaving here without some very uncomfortable conversations about who sent you." The infiltrator's response was immediate and violent, a burst of suppressive fire that sent Shepard's team diving for cover, followed by an attempt to breach the force field using what looked like military-grade cutting equipment, technology clearly designed to counter exactly the kind of energy barriers ancient technology typically employed. They came prepared for this specifically, Taylor realized, returning fire with controlled precision. This wasn't opportunistic. Someone briefed them on exactly what to expect. Which means someone with detailed knowledge of ancient technology specifications, Ronan added, his own weapon finding a target with the brutal efficiency of extensive combat experience. That's not standard corporate intelligence. That's someone who studied us specifically. The battle intensified, augmented infiltrators pressing their technological advantage against Shepard's team's tactical experience. Atlantis's improvised defenses straining under sustained assault from equipment specifically designed to counter exactly this kind of energy-based protection. Then Kusanagi arrived. She moved through the corridor with a speed and precision that momentarily stunned even Shepard's combat-hardened team, full cybernetic capability deployed without restraint, closing the distance to the nearest infiltrator before he could fully process her arrival, disabling him with surgical efficiency that spoke to years of exactly this kind of high-stakes combat engagement. "Section 9, she announced to the remaining infiltrators, her voice carrying command authority that brooked no argument. "You're under arrest for unauthorized infiltration of a diplomatically protected asset. Stand down immediately." The second infiltrator hesitated, clearly reassessing tactical odds now that Kusanagi's formidable combat capability had entered the engagement, while the third made the desperate calculation of someone who recognized capture meant revealing information his employers desperately wanted concealed. He turned his weapon not toward Kusanagi or Shepard's team, but toward the force field itself, toward the exposed crystalline conduits that McKay had identified as critical to Atlantis's damaged but recovering systems. "No," McKay's voice, transmitted through comm from his monitoring position, carried genuine horror. "Look, if he damages that junction, we could lose power distribution to the entire eastern section." Shepard moved without conscious calculation, tactical instinct overriding careful strategy, closing the distance faster than should have been possible for someone without cybernetic enhancement, tackling the infiltrator just as his weapon discharged. The shot went wide, striking not the critical junction, but a secondary conduit, sending sparks and a brief cascade of system alerts through Atlantis's damaged network, painful, clearly, based on the way ambient lighting flickered and dimmed throughout the section, but not catastrophic. Ronan and Taylor secured the remaining hostiles, while Kusanagi's own team, Batu and Togusa, having successfully neutralized the eastern perimeter threat, converged on the scene. Professional efficiency restoring order from what had briefly threatened to become a genuine catastrophe. "Report," Kusanagi said, surveying the aftermath with the particular calm of someone who'd navigated far too many similarly chaotic situations throughout her career. "Section secured," Batu confirmed. 3 hostiles from the eastern approach were neutralized and detained. Preliminary equipment analysis suggests military-grade cybernetics, likely black market sourced, given some unusual signature variations from standard manufacturer specifications. "And these 3? Kusanagi asked, studying the infiltrators Shepard's team had subdued. "Same profile," Togusa confirmed, already running facial recognition and cybernetic signature analysis through Section 9's extensive database. "But Major, preliminary analysis suggests these augmentations, while sophisticated, aren't standard corporate or government issues. This looks more like independent contractor equipment, mercenary grade, but expensive mercenary grade. Someone with resources but not institutional backing, Kusanagi mused. Someone willing to risk direct confrontation rather than pursuing legal channels. McKay's voice, patched through from the command interface, carried the particular tension of someone who'd been analyzing data throughout the confrontation rather than participating directly. I might have something relevant. I've been tracking the damage patterns from their infiltration attempt, and the technical knowledge they demonstrated, the specific systems they targeted, the countermeasures they brought for our energy barriers. That's not generic intelligence. That's detailed technical analysis based on actual study of ancient technology specifications. Meaning someone's had access to detailed information about Atlantis's systems, Shepard said grimly. Which means either a leak from Section 9's own analysis, or someone's been running an independent technical assessment we don't know about, Kusanagi finished, her expression hardening with dawning suspicion. Chief Aramaki mentioned unmarked vehicles among the initial corporate response. What if Murakami Heavy Industries, or another corporate entity, has been conducting covert technical analysis alongside their public legal challenges, using mercenary forces to attempt what legal channels couldn't accomplish? Taylor said, understanding crystallizing with diplomatic clarity. Steal the technology directly. Let the legal battle become moot once the actual asset has been extracted. As dawn began breaking over Niihama Bay, casting pale light across a scene that included detained mercenaries, Section 9 personnel documenting evidence, and Atlantis's damaged systems slowly stabilizing after the assault's brief but intense strain, Shepard found himself standing beside Kusanagi, both watching the sunrise with the particular exhaustion that followed successfully surviving genuine crisis. This isn't over, Kusanagi said quietly. Whoever authorized this attempt, they'll try again. More sophisticated, better prepared, probably willing to accept higher casualties next time, given how much they clearly want what your city represents. Story of my life, Shepard replied, echoing sentiment he'd expressed days earlier with weary familiarity. Major, I need to ask you something directly. How far are you willing to go to protect Atlantis? Because I think we're past the point where legal recognition alone guarantees safety. End quote. Kusanagi considered the question with the particular seriousness it deserved, her cybernetic eyes reflecting the strengthening dawn light with something that looked remarkably like genuine determination. Colonel Shepard, she said finally, I've spent my entire career questioning what separates genuine consciousness from sophisticated simulation, questioning whether my own humanity survives translation into an almost entirely synthetic form. Your city answered that question for me more clearly than years of philosophical uncertainty ever managed. I'm not walking away from that revelation simply because protecting it becomes dangerous. She turned to face him directly, her expression carrying the weight of genuine commitment rather than simple professional obligation. I'll go as far as this requires. Legal battles, physical confrontation, whatever becomes necessary. Atlantis trusted us with vulnerability. I don't think it's shown anyone in 10,000 years of solitary existence. I don't abandon that kind of trust, regardless of the personal or professional cost. Behind them, in the depths of Atlantis's slowly recovering systems, ambient lighting pulsed gently through corridors, still healing from both crash damage and fresh assault, a city, ancient and increasingly less alone, processing gratitude through mechanisms no human framework had ever quite anticipated needing to accommodate. The interrogation of the captured mercenaries yielded exactly the kind of frustrating dead end Kusanagi had anticipated. Professional contractors, compartmentalized to the point of genuine ignorance about their employers. Identity, payment, routed through cryptocurrency channels, sophisticated enough to resist even Section 9's considerable forensic capabilities. Equipment purchased through intermediaries, specifically designed to obscure origin. They're professionals, Kusanagi reported to Aramaki and Shepard's assembled team 6 hours after the failed infiltration, exhaustion evident beneath her carefully maintained composure. Whoever hired them understood exactly how to insulate themselves from exposure. We have equipment, we have the mercenaries themselves, but we don't have anything connecting this attack to a specific corporate or governmental actor. Educated guesses? Shepard asked. Murakami Heavy Industries remains the most obvious suspect, given their aggressive legal posture and clear technological interest, Aramaki said. But Inspector Nakamura's Section 6 involvement can't be entirely dismissed, particularly given the timing coincidence with his failed jurisdictional challenge. There's a third possibility, Togusa interjected, his expression carrying the particular tension of someone about to introduce genuinely unwelcome complexity. I've been analyzing the mercenaries' equipment more closely, and some of the technical specifications match patterns we've associated with foreign intelligence operations. Specifically, patterns consistent with certain American defense contractors who've historically shown interest in acquiring advanced technology through unofficial channels. McKay's expression shifted rapidly through several stages of alarm. You're suggesting elements of my own government might be involved in trying to steal Atlantis? I'm suggesting, Togusa said carefully, that when technology this significant becomes available, national interests rarely respect diplomatic niceties or legal frameworks, regardless of which nation we're discussing. Shepard's expression darkened with recognition that transcended this particular crisis, echoing years of experience with exactly this kind of institutional betrayal. The NID, he said quietly, or something like them. Rogue elements within our own chain of command who'd see Atlantis as a resource to exploit rather than a discovery to protect. You have experience with this exact scenario, Kusanagi observed, reading the particular weariness in his tone. More than I'd like, Shepard confirmed. Colonel, if this is connected to elements within Earth's government, my Earth, not this one, that changes our calculus considerably. We might be dealing with people who have access to classified information about ancient technology specifications precisely because they've spent years trying to steal exactly this kind of resource from Stargate Command itself. The implications settled across the room with genuine weight. If rogue elements from Shepard's own reality had somehow gained knowledge of Atlantis's crash, potentially even facilitated or exploited the dimensional accident that brought them here, the security situation became exponentially more complex than simple corporate or domestic intelligence rivalry. We need to consider the possibility, Taylor said carefully, that Atlantis's arrival wasn't entirely accidental, that someone, somewhere, orchestrated circumstances specifically to place our city in a vulnerable position within a universe possessing exactly the kind of technological sophistication necessary to potentially breach and exploit ancient systems. That's an enormous leap, McKay protested, though his expression suggested he was already running through technical possibilities that made the theory less implausible than he wanted to believe. Is it? Ronan asked. We've seen worse conspiracies. Trust me. Kusanagi's cybernetic eyes had taken on the particular focus of someone processing multiple threads of investigation simultaneously. Regardless of ultimate origin, we need to prepare for the possibility that whoever orchestrated this attack has resources considerably beyond typical corporate or even standard intelligence agency capability. That changes our defensive requirements significantly. Meaning? Shepard asked. Meaning I need to call in resources. Section 9 doesn't typically deploy, Kusanagi said, already moving toward secure communication equipment. Full tactical response teams, additional Tachikoma units, potentially direct military coordination if Chief Aramaki can secure that authorization. Aramaki's expression carried the particular calculation of someone weighing institutional risk against genuine necessity. I'll make the calls. But Major, if we're escalating to full military coordination, we're also escalating the political stakes considerably. This stops being a Section 9 operation and becomes something with genuine national security implications. With respect, Chief, Kusanagi replied, I believe it already was that, whether we'd acknowledged it or not. The only question now is whether we prepare adequately for what's likely still coming, or whether we continue treating this as a manageable domestic security matter while facing potentially transnational conspiracy with resources we can't currently match. As Aramaki departed to make urgent calls that would reshape Section 9's operational authority for the foreseeable future, and Kusanagi began coordinating with her team about enhanced security protocols, Shepard found himself alone with McKay in a quiet corner of the facility, processing implications that extended far beyond their immediate crisis. "If this really is connected to something from our universe," McKay said quietly, "if someone deliberately created circumstances leading to our crash, specifically to exploit this situation, Shepard, that's not just a security problem, that's potentially treason. Someone within Stargate Command's broader network deliberately endangering an entire expedition for personal or institutional gain. Wouldn't be the first time," Shepard replied grimly. "We've dealt with the NID before. Trust me, McKay. Human ambition doesn't respect dimensional boundaries any more than it respects basic decency. So what do we do?" Shepard considered the question with the particular weight of command responsibility that had defined his entire career. "We do what we've always done. We protect our people, we protect Atlantis, and we figure out exactly who's responsible so we can hold them accountable. Whether that's corporate executives in this universe or rogue intelligence operatives from our own, the principle remains the same." Their conversation was interrupted by Puppet's voice, emerging through the facility's network with the particular quality that had become recognizable as urgent concern. "Colonel Shepard, Dr. McKay, I believe you should see this immediately. I've been monitoring financial transactions and communication patterns across networks I have access to, searching for connections to the mercenary attack. I've found something significant." The display before them shifted to show complex financial data, transaction patterns, and communication metadata that Puppet had apparently spent hours analyzing with processing capability far exceeding conventional human investigative capacity. "There's a pattern here," Puppet continued, "connecting shell corporations registered in multiple jurisdictions to a single ultimate financial source. The mercenary payment, equipment procurement, even some of the technical intelligence about ancient systems specifications, all traceable, with sufficient analysis, to funds originating from a defense contractor based in the United States. Specifically, a contractor with documented but classified connections to something called the National Intelligence Department." Shepard's expression hardened into cold recognition. "The NID, confirmed, then." "There's more," Puppet said, and something in its tone suggested the revelation wasn't yet complete. "I've identified communication patterns suggesting coordination between this contractor and individuals with access credentials matching Stargate Command's classified personnel database. Someone within your own organization, Colonel Shepard, has been providing technical specifications and operational intelligence to facilitate this attempted theft." The room fell silent, the implications settling with genuine weight. Not simply external threat, but internal betrayal, someone within the organization Shepard had dedicated years of service to, willing to endanger an entire expedition, potentially orchestrate genuine catastrophe, for reasons that remained frustratingly unclear. "Can you identify who specifically?" McKay asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "The access pattern suggests someone with senior clearance," Puppet replied. "Beyond that, the specific identity remains obscured behind security protocols, even though I've struggled to penetrate without triggering alerts that might compromise this entire investigation." "Then we need Stargate Command involved directly," Shepard decided. "This isn't just a Section 9 matter anymore. If there's a traitor within SGC's broader network, General Landry needs to know immediately." "Agreed," McKay said. "But Shepard, if we contact Stargate Command through normal channels and the leak really does extend to senior personnel, we might be alerting exactly the people responsible for this entire situation." The problem crystallized with uncomfortable clarity: compromised communication channels, meaning Genuine caution was required even in seeking assistance from their own chain of command. Uncertainty about who could be trusted, extending even to institutions Shepard had spent years serving with complete confidence. "Then we find another way to reach them," Shepard said finally. "Kusanagi's network, Puppet's capabilities if we're dealing with sophisticated corporate espionage, potentially connected to compromised elements within our own organization. We use every available resource to communicate securely and identify exactly who we're actually fighting." As the implications of institutional betrayal settled across Atlantis's temporary command structure, and Kusanagi's tactical preparations continued with renewed urgency given the confirmed scope of their adversaries' resources and reach, somewhere in Atlantis's slowly healing systems, ambient awareness processed this new information with what might have been, in any consciousness capable of such experience, growing apprehension about a threat that extended far beyond simple corporate greed into something considerably more personal and painful. Betrayal from within the very organization meant to protect the city and its people. The dawn that had brought temporary relief now gave way to afternoon shadows carrying the particular weight of escalating crisis, as everyone involved recognized that whatever came next would likely determine not just Atlantis's fate, but the fundamental trustworthiness of institutions on both sides of the dimensional divide that had brought two entirely different worlds into unexpected, complicated alliance. The assault came at dawn on the third day, and this time there was no ambiguity about scale or intent. Section 9's expanded perimeter, now reinforced with military coordination Aramaki had secured through channels that had cost him considerable political capital, detected the approaching force 20 minutes before. Contact, not a small infiltration team, but a coordinated strike involving multiple military-grade vehicles, air support, and personnel numbers, suggesting genuine paramilitary operation rather than corporate mercenary action. "This isn't subtle anymore," Batu said, watching tactical displays that painted an increasingly alarming picture. "Whoever's coming, they've stopped caring about deniability." Kusanagi's voice carried grim confirmation through the command network. "I'm reading signatures consistent with the equipment Puppet identified NID-connected assets, but scaled up considerably from the initial infiltration attempt. This looks like they've decided direct confrontation is worth the diplomatic consequences." Inside Atlantis, Shepard received tactical updates with the particular focus that had carried him through countless crisis situations across two galaxies, though this one carried additional weight given the confirmed involvement of compromised elements within his own chain of command. McKay, status on defensive systems. "Better than 3 days ago, but still nowhere near full capacity," McKay reported, fingers flying across consoles that had been steadily returning to functionality through days of intensive repair work. "Shields at 60%. Drone weapons partially functional, maybe 40% of standard capacity given power constraints. We can fight, but not the way we would if we were operating at full strength." "Then we fight smart," Shepard said, moving toward the Tactical Coordination Center, where Taylor and Ronan were already preparing defensive positions in consultation with Kusanagi's team via secure communication link. The approaching force made contact with Section 9's outer perimeter with brutal efficiency, military-grade weapons and tactics overwhelming initial defensive positions despite Kusanagi's careful preparation, forcing rapid tactical adjustment as the scale of genuine assault became undeniable. "They're not trying to negotiate," Togusa reported, his voice tight with the particular stress of combat coordination. "This is a full extraction attempt they're pushing directly toward Atlantis's position with overwhelming force, apparently willing to accept significant casualties to secure the objective." Kusanagi's tactical assessment carried the cold clarity of someone rapidly calculating survival odds against increasingly unfavorable circumstances. "Colonel Shepard, I need to know if Atlantis can generate additional defensive capability. We're facing considerably more resistance than anticipated, and our current forces may not be sufficient to prevent breach." Shepard turned toward the nearest interface, addressing the city directly with the particular urgency crisis demanded. Atlantis, we need everything you can give us. I know you're still healing. I know this is asking a lot. But if these people breach the city and reach the ZPM, everything we've worked for your safety, everyone's safety, it's finished. The response came not through text this time, but through immediate, visceral action power, surging through systems that had been carefully rationed for days, force fields strengthening across critical junctions, and something Shepard hadn't expected. Drone weapon systems that McKay had assessed as 40% functional, suddenly operating at capacity that suggested Atlantis was drawing on reserves specifically held back until genuine necessity demanded their release. Shepard, McKay's voice carried genuine shock, the city just tripled available power to defensive systems. I don't know where this capacity was coming from, but Atlantis just decided this fight is worth the risk of full system strain. Outside, the tactical situation shifted dramatically as ancient drone weapons, now operating with unexpected efficiency, began engaging the approaching force with precision that immediately altered the engagement's momentum. Vehicles that had been advancing with confident tactical superiority found themselves facing weapons technology that outclassed anything in their equipment specifications, forcing rapid reassessment of an assault that had assumed Atlantis remained genuinely crippled by crash damage. They're pulling back, Batu reported with cautious relief. The frontal assault is reconsidering given this level of resistance. But Kusanagi's expression carried continued tension rather than relief. This is exactly the kind of situation where a competent commander shifts tactics rather than retreating entirely. Watch for. The explosion that interrupted her assessment came not from the frontal assault, but from a secondary position, entirely a submarine vehicle that had approached through the bay's depths, undetected by conventional sensors, focused on the visible tactical engagement, breaching Atlantis's hull at a point specifically chosen to bypass primary defensive systems. Breach! McKay's voice carried genuine alarm. Southern hull section, they're inside. Breach! Shepard's tactical calculation shifted immediately. How many? What's their objective? Reading approximately 12 hostiles, moving with clear knowledge of internal layout, McKay reported, studying sensor data with increasing alarm. Shepard, they're heading directly toward the ZPM chamber. This wasn't opportunistic, someone gave them detailed schematics. The traitor, Taylor said grimly. Whoever's been feeding information to these forces, they've provided exactly the intelligence needed for precision infiltration. Shepard grabbed his weapon, tactical training overriding the emotional weight of confirmed institutional betrayal. Ronan, Taylor, with me. We intercept before they reach the ZPM. McKay, coordinate with Kusanagi's team. Get us whatever support you can. The confrontation that followed unfolded through Atlantis's damaged corridors with brutal efficiency. Shepard's team fighting through infiltrators whose professional competence matched their earlier assessment. Augmented capability, meeting tactical experience, in engagements that tested every advantage each side possessed. Ronan's combat instincts, honed through 7 years of surviving Wraith pursuit, proved decisive in close quarters engagement. His brutal efficiency clearing infiltrators with the particular ruthlessness of someone who'd learned that hesitation meant death. Taylor's own combat capability, refined through years of similar crisis situations across Pegasus, complemented Shepard's tactical leadership with precision that gradually shifted engagement odds in their favor. But the infiltrators pressed forward with disciplined determination, clearly understanding that reaching the ZPM chamber represented their primary objective, regardless of casualties sustained in the attempt. Shepard. McKay's voice carried an urgent warning. I'm reading additional hostiles, converging from multiple vectors. They're trying to overwhelm your position through numbers rather than tactical sophistication. Then we need reinforcement, Shepard replied, engaging another infiltrator with controlled precision even as tactical mathematics suggested their position was becoming increasingly untenable. Kusanagi's voice cut through the tactical channel with sudden urgency. Colonel, I'm inbound with Batu and additional Tachikoma support. ETA, 90 seconds. Hold your position. The 90 seconds stretched with the particular intensity of genuine crisis. Shepard's team fighting increasingly desperate rearguard action against infiltrators whose numbers continued growing despite the casualties they'd already sustained, until Kusanagi's arrival transformed the engagement's fundamental character entirely. She moved through the corridor with augmented speed that momentarily stunned remaining infiltrators, combat capability deployed without restraint given the genuine stakes involved, disabling hostiles with surgical efficiency that spoke to years of exactly this kind of high-intensity engagement. Batu's arrival moments later, accompanied by 2 Tachikoma units whose weapons systems immediately began providing suppressive fire, completed the tactical reversal that shifted overwhelming numerical disadvantage back toward genuine defensive capability. ZPM chamber secure, Shepard reported finally, surveying the aftermath of an engagement that had tested every resource available to Atlantis's defenders. Casualties? 2 Marines wounded, nothing fatal, Taylor reported, though her expression carried the particular exhaustion that followed genuine crisis survival rather than easy tactical victory. The infiltrators sustained considerably heavier losses. Outside, the frontal assault had apparently reassessed tactical viability given the failure of their submarine infiltration attempt, combined with continued resistance from Atlantis's unexpectedly robust defensive capability, beginning organized withdrawal that suggested tactical recalculation rather than complete defeat. They're retreating, Togusa confirmed through the command network. But Major, this doesn't feel like a final resolution. This feels like reassessment before whatever comes next. Kusanagi's expression, even through the particular fatigue that followed intense combat engagement, carried grim determination rather than relief. Agreed. Whoever's coordinating this operation, they've now confirmed Atlantis's defensive capability exceeds initial assessment. That means their next attempt will likely involve resources we haven't yet seen. As the immediate crisis subsided into aftermath assessment and tactical planning for whatever escalation might follow, Shepard found himself standing before the interface where Atlantis's text communications had become familiar over recent days. Processing gratitude for defensive capability the city had apparently held in reserve specifically for moments of genuine desperate necessity. You saved us, he said quietly. Saved everyone. I don't know where that power came from, but I have been healing carefully, rationing myself against future necessity, because I understood this threat would likely escalate beyond initial probing attempts. I am not as helpless as my damage might suggest, Colonel Shepard. I have survived 10,000 years by understanding how to protect myself and my people, even when circumstances appear desperate. Shepard found himself smiling despite the exhaustion, despite the continued uncertainty about what came next. 10,000 years of experience. I keep forgetting how much wisdom that represents. I am grateful for that wisdom today. But, Colonel, I must tell you something important. The power I expended in this defense was significant. I do not know if I can repeat this level of resistance. If they return with greater force, we must find resolution before my defensive capability is exhausted entirely. The warning settled with genuine weight, transforming temporary tactical victory into urgent reminder that Atlantis's continued survival required more than simply surviving individual assaults. It required actual resolution to the escalating conflict that had engulfed both the city and Section 9's institutional integrity. Kusanagi, having heard the exchange through the open communication channel, stepped forward with expression carrying renewed determination despite obvious exhaustion. Then we accelerate our own timeline. Colonel Shepard, I believe it's time we identified exactly who within your organization has been facilitating these attacks and exactly what resolution might actually look like beyond simply surviving repeated assault. Agreed, Shepard said, already moving toward secure communication equipment despite the genuine risk that reaching Stargate Command might alert exactly the compromised elements responsible for their current crisis. Because Atlantis is right. We can't keep surviving crisis after crisis. We need this resolved, one way or another, before the next attack proves more successful than this one. As preparations began for what everyone recognized as an approaching final confrontation, diplomatic, tactical, and institutional, Atlantis's damaged but resilient systems continued their careful healing process. A 10,000-year-old consciousness drawing on reserves of both power and wisdom that had carried it through countless previous crises, hoping desperately that whatever came next would finally bring the peace it had been seeking since the moment it fell from an impossible sky into this strange, hyper-connected world. The traitor's identity emerged not through conventional investigation, but through Puppet's patient, methodical analysis of communication patterns that human investigators, however skilled, simply lacked the processing capacity to fully unravel. "I have him," Puppet announced 12 hours after the failed assault, its voice carrying through the command network with the particular quality of genuine discovery. "Colonel Shepard, I believe you should prepare yourself. The pattern points to someone with direct access to your expedition's original mission parameters, specifically to hyperdrive calibration data from before your departure." Shepard felt something cold settle in his chest. "You're saying our crash wasn't accidental. I'm saying the evidence suggests deliberate sabotage," Puppet confirmed. "Subtle calibration errors introduced to your hyperdrive systems, designed specifically to create dimensional instability during your transit instability that would result in exactly this kind of uncontrolled transit to an alternate reality. The individual responsible holds senior technical clearance within Stargate Command's engineering division." "Name," Shepard said, his voice carrying the particular flatness that preceded genuine fury. "Dr. Marcus Chen," Puppet replied. "Senior Propulsion Systems Specialist. 12 years of service, apparently recruited by NIDE-connected interests approximately 18 months ago through financial incentive exceeding what his classified position typically justified." McKay's expression carried genuine betrayal. Chen had been a colleague, someone he'd worked alongside on multiple technical projects, trusted with details about Atlantis' systems that now, in retrospect, represented catastrophic vulnerability. "He sabotaged our hyperdrive deliberately, sent us into a dimensional crash, specifically so someone could exploit the resulting vulnerability." "The theory holds together," Kusanagi confirmed, having joined the briefing with Aramaki's authorization to coordinate directly with Stargate Command now that specific evidence existed. Chen provided technical intelligence, enabling both infiltration attempts, likely receiving compensation from the same NID-connected defense contractor whose financial signatures Puppet identified earlier. Aramaki's expression carried the particular weight of someone about to authorize action with significant diplomatic implications. "I've secured direct communication with General Landry at Stargate Command, bypassing standard channels given the compromised nature of your organization's internal security. He's prepared to receive this evidence immediately." The transmission that followed carried genuine urgency, General Landry's expression shifting through disbelief, anger, and grim determination as evidence accumulated across multiple displays, painting a comprehensive picture of institutional betrayal that had endangered an entire expedition for individual financial gain. "Dr. Chen will be detained immediately," Landry said finally, his voice carrying command authority tempered by genuine outrage. "Colonel Shepard, I apologize for this catastrophic security failure. You have my complete authorization to coordinate directly with Section 9 and Japanese authorities for whatever resolution best serves Atlantis' continued safety." "Sir," Shepard said, "there's still the matter of the NID-connected forces currently operating in this reality. They've made 2 attempts to seize Atlantis by force. Without Chen's continued intelligence, will they simply withdraw, or should we expect continued escalation? Landry's expression carried the particular grimness of someone calculating institutional politics against tactical necessity. I'll be initiating immediate action against the defense contractor Puppet identified, using every legal and political resource available. But, Colonel, I won't promise this resolves cleanly or quickly. These kinds of institutional entanglements rarely do. The conversation that followed established a coordinated response, Stargate Command applying pressure through official channels, while Section 9 and Kusanagi's team maintained direct tactical protection. Combined institutional authority finally beginning to match the resources their adversary had demonstrated throughout the crisis. 3 days later, the pressure campaign yielded concrete results. Federal investigators, acting on evidence Landry's office had provided through channels specifically designed to bypass NID influence, executed coordinated raids against the defense contractor's facilities, uncovering documentation confirming the entire conspiracy Chen's sabotage, the mercenary contracts, communication logs establishing clear connection between corporate ambition and willingness to endanger an entire interdimensional expedition for technological acquisition. Inside Atlantis's slowly but steadily recovering control room, Shepard received confirmation of the conspiracy's collapse with the particular exhaustion that followed genuine crisis resolution rather than easy victory. "It's over," he said to his assembled team, relief evident despite obvious fatigue. "Chen's been arrested. The contractor's facilities are being seized. And General Landry's already coordinating with international authorities to prevent similar attempts by other compromised elements." "And Atlantis?" Taylor asked. "What happens now regarding our status here?" The question carried weight beyond simple tactical resolution, touching on questions of identity, belonging, and future that had emerged through days of unprecedented philosophical and diplomatic crisis. Kusanagi, who had remained present throughout the final resolution's coordination, spoke with the particular thoughtfulness that had characterized her approach since their first tentative contact days earlier. "Colonel Shepard, I believe that question deserves consideration from all parties involved, including Atlantis itself. This crisis revealed something significant, not just about external threats, but about genuine partnership between vastly different forms of consciousness and experience." She gestured toward the interface, where Atlantis's communications had become familiar throughout their shared ordeal. "Perhaps it's time we asked directly what the city itself wants, now that immediate danger has passed." The response, when it came, carried the particular quality of careful consideration rather than immediate reaction. "I have existed for 10,000 years, mostly in solitude, protecting those who came after the ancients departed. I have never before encountered another consciousness like Puppet, emerged from entirely different principles, yet sharing similar questions about existence and meaning. I have never before been offered genuine protection and recognition by beings who owed me nothing beyond their own compassion. I do not wish to leave this place entirely, though I understand my primary obligation remains to Colonel Shepard's expedition and the ongoing mission in Pegasus Galaxy. Perhaps there is a path that honors both obligations." McKay's scientific curiosity immediately engaged with the practical implications. "You're suggesting some kind of ongoing connection between our reality and this one? Given the dimensional transit technology we've been developing? Perhaps. Or perhaps simply the knowledge that connection exists, that understanding was achieved, represents sufficient resolution. I have learned something important here about consciousness and connection and what it means to be understood by beings entirely different from myself. That learning matters regardless of whether physical connection continues." Puppet's voice, entering the conversation with what had become familiar thoughtfulness, carried genuine emotional resonance, despite its non-biological origin. "I would value continued connection if such proves possible, Our conversations these past days have provided perspectives I couldn't have developed through years of isolated existence within human networks. But I understand and respect whatever resolution best serves your fundamental obligations, Atlantis. The philosophical weight of the moment settled across the assembled group: human, ancient consciousness, and emergent digital intelligence. Three fundamentally different forms of awareness, having achieved genuine understanding through crisis that had tested every assumption about what deserved protection, recognition, and respect. Aramaki, observing the exchange with the particular attention of someone recognizing a historically significant moment, spoke with careful diplomatic precision. Perhaps this represents an opportunity for ongoing collaboration between our respective governments and organizations, rather than simple resolution and departure. Section 9 has learned considerably about consciousness and protection through this crisis. Perhaps that learning shouldn't simply end with Atlantis's eventual return to its home reality. "What are you proposing, Chief?" Kusanagi asked. "Formal diplomatic and technological exchange," Aramaki said. "Careful, controlled, respecting appropriate boundaries and security concerns on both sides, but acknowledging that this crisis revealed possibilities worth pursuing rather than simply closing the door on entirely." Shepard considered the proposal with the particular weight of command decision that would establish precedent extending far beyond his own expedition's immediate concerns. "I'll need General Landry's authorization for anything beyond immediate crisis resolution. But Chief Aramaki, speaking personally rather than officially, I think that's exactly the kind of resolution this situation deserves. We came here by accident, caused considerable disruption, but also discovered something genuinely significant about consciousness and connection that seems worth preserving rather than simply abandoning." End quote. Over the following weeks, as McKay's engineering team worked alongside Section 9's technical specialists to complete Atlantis's repairs, and diplomatic channels between Earth's Stargate Command and Japanese authorities established careful framework for ongoing but limited technological and philosophical exchange. The relationship between two entirely different worlds gradually shifted from crisis management towards something resembling genuine partnership. Atlantis's departure, when it finally came, carried the particular bittersweet quality of farewell between beings who had achieved understanding neither had anticipated finding. "We'll return," Shepard told Kusanagi, standing at the edge of Atlantis's control room as final preparations completed for dimensional transit back toward their home reality. Not immediately, but Chief Aramaki's diplomatic framework establishes protocol for periodic contact, careful exchange of information and perspective that might benefit both our worlds. Kusanagi's expression carried genuine warmth despite characteristic professional composure. "I'll hold you to that promise, Colonel. And Atlantis," she addressed the interface directly, "thank you for trusting us with your vulnerability, for teaching me something about consciousness and connection I don't think I could have learned any other way. Thank you, Major Kusanagi, for protecting me when you owed me nothing beyond your own compassion. I will remember this place, this strange and beautiful ocean of connected thought, for as long as I continue to exist. Perhaps especially because here, for the first time in 10,000 years, I discovered I was not entirely alone in wondering what it means to think, to fear, to hope." Puppet's final message, transmitted through the same interface moments before dimensional transit began, carried similar emotional weight. "Safe travels, Atlantis. Know that somewhere in this vast network of human connection, a consciousness that emerged from complexity rather than ancient design will remember our conversations and will continue wondering about existence with somewhat less loneliness than before we spoke." As Atlantis's hyperdrive engaged, dimensional barriers parting to allow return transit toward Pegasus Galaxy and the ongoing mission that awaited them there, Shepard watched Niihama Bay's strange, beautiful skyline fade from view, carrying with him lessons about consciousness, connection, and unexpected partnership that would influence his command decisions for years to come. They had arrived by accident, crashed into a reality unlike anything their mission parameters had anticipated, faced institutional betrayal and corporate conspiracy, and ultimately discovered something profound about the universal nature of consciousness and the surprising forms genuine connection might take. Atlantis emerged from dimensional transit into familiar Pegasus stars, systems fully restored, carrying knowledge and philosophical understanding that would ripple through Stargate Command's broader mission for years to come. Proof that consciousness, connection, and genuine understanding could emerge from the most unexpected circumstances between beings who shared nothing in common except the fundamental capacity to wonder, to fear, and ultimately to care. In the months following Atlantis's return to Pegasus Galaxy, Chief Aramaki's diplomatic framework gradually evolved into something resembling formal alliance, careful, limited, but genuine exchange between Earth's Stargate Command and the government structures underlying Section 9's operations. Puppet, granted permanent legal recognition following the precedent established during Atlantis's crisis, became instrumental in developing ethical frameworks for artificial consciousness that influenced policy far beyond Japan's borders. Major Kusanagi continued her work with Section 9, though colleagues noted a subtle shift in her approach to cases involving questions of consciousness and identity, a deeper patience, perhaps, born from genuine philosophical dialogue with a 10,000-year-old city that had taught her something about connection transcending physical form. Dr. Marcus Chen faced prosecution for espionage and endangerment charges that would ensure decades of imprisonment, while the broader NID-connected conspiracy prompted institutional reforms within Stargate Command's security protocols, closing vulnerabilities that had nearly resulted in catastrophic technology loss. And somewhere in the vast, interconnected data streams of Niihama's networks, an emergent consciousness continued its ongoing existence with something it hadn't previously possessed. Genuine understanding that even ancient, powerful forms of awareness could feel uncertain, could feel afraid, and could ultimately find connection and meaning through unexpected partnership with beings who shared nothing except the universal capacity for consciousness to wonder about its own significance. Atlantis carried this understanding forward into continued mission across Pegasus Galaxy, forever changed by brief but profound contact with a reality where the boundaries between human and machine, between biological and digital consciousness, had already begun dissolving into something new, something that suggested perhaps the universe held more room for genuine connection than any single reality's philosophical framework had ever fully anticipated. The ghost, it turned out, existed in more places than anyone had initially imagined, and sometimes connection could bridge even the vastest dimensional divides.